Hello, everybody. Welcome to the presentation here at Learn on Demand Systems. We are welcoming you to our Launch Q3 event. And this session is the one-stop shop scheduling instructor-led training. My name is Brian Bork, and I am here with Learn on Demand Systems as the Senior Technical Readiness Trainer. And I am here with some of my coworkers who are here to handle any of your possible questions and also any logistical questions that you might have as we go through. If you need to reach out to me, you can do so at my email address, which is listed in the slide. A couple of key points for logistics. First of all, we want to make sure that you're aware that we are recording this session. So if you have any objection to that, please make sure that you record those objections. But unfortunately, we are going to keep the recording going. So in addition to that, we would also like you to use to mute your microphones, turn off your cameras, and use the chat for any questions that you might have for any of the information that we're going to be covering here. If for any reason the session, we can't answer your question until we get to it, we will do a question and answer session at the end of the session. All right, and last but not least, do not forget, if you post, you could win. You may have seen this at other sessions or at the keynote, but if you haven't seen it, or even if you have, it's always good to repeat. And that is to make sure you snap a picture with or without you in it, telling people that you're attending the Launch Q3 event for Learn on Demand Systems. We prefer if you tell everybody you're having an awesome time, and hopefully you are. And you can reach out to us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and or Facebook. You could do all three. You could do whatever section of those you would like. You can reach out to us at Learn on Demand Systems through LinkedIn. The Twitter is at LOD Systems, and Facebook is at Learn on Demand Systems there. We will be choosing a few gift card winners during the event, and you'll be contacted if you win. So get out there and make sure you publish that. Today, we are going to explore two fundamental things, and I should turn off my camera so that you can focus on the slides and the demonstrations. There we go. So we're going to focus on an overview of how the TMS process is used in order to deliver training. And it's really not complicated, and it's really well diagrammed here. I would love to say that I came up with these, but I didn't, because I am not as intelligent as the people who did come up with the slides for this, because there is lots and lots of good information inside of these slides. So we're going to make sure we cover these slides in depth to make sure you understand the process of delivering training. And then we're going to go in, and for the second half of this presentation, we are going to talk about creating a class. And then, of course, at the end, we will have time for questions and maybe even some answers. So let's get started on talking about the TMS training setup, the process for TMS training. We have the content, we have the users, we have the delivery methods, and we have the connection or connections between users and delivery methods. So we're going to cover each of these topics in a little bit more detail, but as you see here, this flow of information goes from the content with the users to the delivery methods, and then we tie those together with the connection. So let's go into each of these in a little more depth. The content: courses, labs, activities, resources. This might be SCORM, this might be assessments, this might be lab activities, this might be videos. It could be documentation or documents that people need to review. All of that information, all of that content is packaged together into courses. A course holds all the activities and resources that is used during a training session. Now, if you'd like, you can think of a course and the content that is used within that course as sort of a class template that is used. So you put all of the content together and you put it into a package, and then you use that package to distribute to your users. And in order to talk about our users, we'll go to the next slide and look at the three primary types of users that we're going to concern ourselves with as far as what the training management system has to offer. There is the basic user or the end user, the student, the attendee, the end user, whatever you want to refer to them as, that is our basic user account. Then there's the instructor account, and that instructor is the person or persons who are responsible for delivering the content that you're going to be delivering. And then there are operations managers, schedulers, and administrative users. These are the three basic user types that we have inside of the TMS. Now, the training management system doesn't just limit you to these users. You can have specific user roles, but these are the three types that are used for building classes, and that's really what this section is all about. And each of these user accounts will have the appropriate roles that have to be in place in the platform to schedule, deliver, or participate in training in one way or another. Delivery methods are the methods that we use to be able to get the content to the users. Now, this might be instructor-led training, or it might be self-paced training. You need to decide which method you want to use in order to deliver your content effectively to the various types of end users or basic users that you're going to have. You might want to use instructor-led training if an instructor is going to deliver the content, or you might prefer that the end user guide themselves or self-pace their training and have their training available to them over a longer period of time, or just available during a specific section if you've got a good enough set of guides and or challenges in your activities. So instructor-led training is scheduled through classes. Self-paced training is delivered through either a course assignment or a subscription assignment. So let's talk about these delivery methods and how they actually tie into the users. So in order to do that, we have to talk about a connection. Connection is connecting the users to the delivery method. So we've got class enrollments and course assignments or subscription assignments. Class enrollments are how you add users to a class. You might be adding those users to a class manually. You might have them self-enroll. You might have them use a training key, for instance, in order to be able to get in. Course assignments or subscription assignments are a way of giving access to a course to a user, and that is typically how we deliver self-paced training, either a course assignment or a subscription assignment. Now, there's always a question of what is the difference between a course assignment and a subscription assignment? Well, a course is a collection of content, and a subscription is a collection of one or more courses. So you could have a course assignment, or you could have a subscription assignment if you wanted to teach somebody, for example, how to install Server 2016. That course might have a set of activities that would contain, here's how you do the installation. Another course might be, here's how you do the configuration. Another course might be, here's how you do a backup on it. And another course might be, here's how you do a recovery. All of those put together, all of those courses put together might make up a subscription. And that way you could give out a subscription assignment, and then the user would get all of those courses, and you can actually put them in the order you want them to go in as well. So we talk about the content, we talk about the users, we talked about the delivery methods, and then we talked about connecting the users to the delivery methods. Now let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So if you have your content, let's say a lab, and that lab is inside of a course, you can set up a class, which is an instance of a course. Remember how I said a course is sort of like a template for classes. You can use your course to create a class. You put the user into the class, and that generates an enrollment, a class enrollment for the end user. Now, I want to focus on making sure that you realize that students or end users or attendees are the only users who get enrollments. Instructors, while they have access to the course and class, are not actually an enrollment. So I want to make sure that we're keeping those users slightly separate. Now, you can do the same type of thing where you take the content, which is the course, you assign it to a user, and then you get a course assignment. There's no class involved. There's no schedule involved. That self-paced environment is available for a certain period of time, and then it is the assignment is completed, or the user completes the assignment. Subscription assignment is the same thing, only instead of a single course, it is either a single course or a collection of courses, which are put together into a subscription profile, which is then assigned to a user, which becomes a subscription assignment. So as you can see, it all boils down to the four pieces. It is the content, it is the user, it is the I just forgot what it was. It is the delivery method, and then there is the connection between those. So we can set that up in a almost an indefinite amount of ways, but we're going to focus on one aspect of that, and that is creating a class. Now, this is part of a series. This session is a part of a series, and this series is all about taking you from the nothing exists to the point where you're able to deliver something to your students. So we're going to talk about doing a class, but you're also going to need to know how to generate a course, and then also how to do some of the other self-paced stuff like course assignments and subscription assignments, which is in a separate session. Let's take a look at how you actually build or schedule a class from content in a course. When working inside of the TMS, and I am operating here as a manager, this would be as an operations manager, just like most of you are going to operate when you're scheduling these classes. You are going to be working with you're going to be working in the TMS, and the TMS is going to have lots and lots of choices for you. Do yourself a favor and reassign where some of these little squares are. So, for example, if you're working with courses a lot, move that to the front. If you're working with classes a lot, move that to the front. If you move them and release them, they will stick into place. So for the purposes of this session, we are going to concern ourselves with creating a class. And when I click on create a class, I have the same rights here as the traditional ops manager or operations manager has within a Learn on Demand Systems TMS. And I need to select what my content is going to be. And the content is the course. So the first thing you need to fill in is the course. So I'm going to do a choice here, and I'm going to do a search quick and looking for something that has the word sample in it. And we are going to select the course that is called Launch Q3 Sample Course. I'm going to click on it and click on OK. Now, you'll notice that right away it fills in the display name with the same name as the course. And that might be sufficient, but it might be somewhat confusing. More for you or for the instructor than for the end user, because the end user is only going to see the display name, but they're not going to be in a course unless it's a course assignment, and we're not talking about course assignments. So they're going to be in a class. So let's change this, instead of saying course to saying class. Now, again, that isn't a requirement that you change that name. It's just a good best practice in order to be able to make sure you're distinguishing between a course, which is a template for building the class, and the class itself, which is an instance of the course. Then you would put in a description. The description is going to appear in the overview or basic information section of the course or class. This is something that you typically put in place with a fairly lengthy description of everything that's going to be covered, but it doesn't need to be very large. For example, this is a sample class or watch. That's it. That's all it really needs to be, because it's an explanation of what it is. But you want to put enough information in there to describe what this class is. Now, you could copy this information from a course description, but this is typically going to be more relevant information specifically to the class. The time zone is an important field, and it is important because by default, it is going to stay with whatever your organizational time zone is set to. So if your organization is set to Central, because you're located in Chicago, then that's the one that it's going to use to begin with. But the time zone is really just a base for you to know when the class is scheduled, because the other people who come in and have enrollments or are instructors or so on, they're going to come in and they're going to see it scheduled at the time that applies to them. So, for example, if you were to have a class that was scheduled based on time in the Central Time Zone, and they happen to be coming in from London, that would be approximately 7 or 8. I don't think it ever gets down to 6, but 7 or now I'm rethinking that. I think it's either 6 or 7 hours ahead. So their time would be, if it was at 9 a.m., it would be closer to like 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon, their time, because they're going to be ahead. So when they come in and they see the schedule, they're going to see it based on where they are located, not where the class is being located. So you can think of this as sort of an arbitrary, this is where the class is being held. A lot of times I find it helpful to schedule the class for whatever time zone I'm in, so that I always know that it's showing me based on my schedule, so that I know that my resources need to be in place at certain times. Then we have our minimum students and our maximum students. Now, our minimum students is more of a reference point. If this number were set to be 2 and we only had 1 student, that would not prevent the class from running, but it would let you know that there were that the minimum was not met. The maximum students, however, does actually put a cap on the class. This is how many people can be enrolled, whether they're physically enrolled by you, or if they're doing self-enrollment or registering with a product key, a class key, or a enrollment key. If they're using any of those types of technologies to do it, there still is a maximum, in this particular case, of 20 people who could be attending. Now, you can have people who wait list or who end up as registered but not enrolled, and you could change that. And you can also come in here and change the max enrollment up until the time where the class starts. All right. And then the status will be default to selected. Now, this is the basic information. We're going to cover the advanced information in a little bit, because we don't really need much more than the basics in order to be able to get a class set up. But we do need to talk about some of the advanced features and what's located there, so you know when to turn on advanced settings and when to leave them just as the basic settings. Of course, you can always set your preferences for your organization to be to show you the advanced settings at all times if you prefer. All right, next are the session times. Now, Session Scheduler is a very handy tool, and it's going to become even more handy once we have the delivery set up so that it will have association with a certain date and time as well. But when you're thinking about when your class is going to run, you need to consider to yourself, how many sessions am I going to have? And when do I want to hold them? So we're going to give you a couple of different circumstances. Let's just say that you want to have a 5-day class or a 5-session class, and you want that to run on Wednesday and Friday and Monday only. All right. So that means that because of the default date that it starts at the next available Wednesday. If I wanted to start this today on September 30th, and I go ahead and click on OK, you'll notice that it builds it out. So it shows the 30th, which is Wednesday, the 2nd, which is Friday, then the 5th, which is Monday, then the 7th, and it really does actually only put the classes in the next available session times in those specific days. If I go ahead and delete these and put in the typical schedule, which would be Monday through Friday, you will notice that we'll have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday. So if I set this once again for the 30th, which is today, and click on OK, here's the 30th, the 1st, the 2nd, the 5th, and the 6th. So it is smart enough to know that you have certain dates selected and you can have those classes on those dates. Now, the important thing to remember is if you want classes to run on the weekend, you either need to set that up as a preference in your organization, or you need to remember to add session times and then click on Saturday and Sunday. And that way, when you add your sessions, 5 sessions starting on Wednesday, you'll see that we get them right in a row, the 30th, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just schedule it for your standard 5 days. Actually, I was going to show you one other thing, which is what happens if you just want it to be every Monday for 5 Mondays. Well, you can add session times. Once again, leave it as 5, and then uncheck all of the boxes here except for Mondays. And then the soonest it can start, of course, is next Monday. And so I click on OK, and there my 5 sessions are in place. All right. So I'm going to leave this like it is, just because it isn't going to change the impact of this particular sample class. But I want you to realize that scheduling your session times, it is important to remember that you have to schedule your dates accordingly, but you also need to schedule your times, and remember that these times are based on that basic information time zone that you have selected up here. All right, it even tells you right here that it's in Central Standard Time. Okay, so I've got my time selected. Now let's talk about delivery. You have 3 delivery options. You have physical, virtual, or physical and virtual, also known as a hybrid scenario. When you're working with physical and virtual, you have a couple of different options. When you're working with physical, you can either add a classroom or create a classroom. And that would be if you were actually holding this in a live environment, you could put in the classroom, and that classroom could have a certain number of or a certain reference point that would be inside of the class description when you are looking at where this class is being held. In a virtual environment, you have some choices as far as what you have available to your environment or your organization. In this case, I've got Adobe Connect, Zoom, and my custom virtual classroom. If you're using your custom virtual classroom, you can put in anything you'd like. And this is a little bit of a sneak peek at, or not sneak peek, this is a little bit of a heads up as to what is coming. Right now, if I go ahead and put, say, a Teams session or a Teams link in here, like, for example, this one right here in my clipboard, if I were to put that in, this would be live right now as soon as I clicked on save. And that would mean that people would have an enter classroom button that they can click on it and away it goes. But coming soon, hopefully by the end of this week, there is going to be a additional option where you can set when the enter classroom button is available, so that even if your session isn't scheduled to start until Wednesday, the enter classroom button will not appear until you set it to start maybe 15 minutes before class, or maybe right at the beginning of class, so they can click on the enter classroom button and you won't have to manually control that yourself. As it is, we're going to leave this as a physical for this a physical classroom for this sample. Then under instructors, you can add one or more instructors. Now I'm going to add an instructor here who is Brian and Instruct. And there's Brian Instructor. I'm going to add them. They automatically get added, and they get added as the primary of the instructors. If I wanted to have multiple instructors, I could add additional instructors as well. I could either select them as the primary, and then Brian becomes the secondary. You can only have one primary, and obviously the most important thing is when you're working with Zoom virtual classrooms, you want to be sure that all of your instructors are registered as licensed users of your Zoom account. In order, their email addresses have to match in order to have them all be able to start and stop the Zoom meeting that is, or the Zoom classroom that you're going to be using. But primary and secondary don't really matter. They're going to be eligible for being able to enter classroom and be able to operate as instructors and change presenters and do everything that needs to be done. And then notification trigger, we have a wonderful webinar on notifications that was just recently recorded. I strongly encourage you to check that out. There you could also go to our TMS networking times and talk with some of our experts in the TMS, subject matter experts who know about the TMS, and they can help answer any questions that you might have about setting up notifications and their triggers. All right, so that covers the basic information. Let's take a look at the advanced tabs or the advanced settings. Now, once I click on that, you'll notice that I get a little bit more information over what we're going to be covering here. You get things like a material list. You get survey information and survey availability. There's a student survey, an instructor survey, and an organization survey. Does that mean that those things weren't there? No. That just means that you were getting that information from the course. So if the course was set up properly, you would get that information automatically. You don't need to come in here and adjust it. But if you do need to adjust that for this particular class, maybe you want a special survey for a specific customer, for instance, and you want to put that survey in, you can go in here and choose that survey so that this instance, this class, will have a different survey than the course normally specifies. All right. Let's see here. Okay. The three main checkboxes that we're going to talk about here are the ones down at the bottom. The allow anonymous access, the allow self-enrollment, and allow automatic enrollment using a training key. Now, these are actually worded quite well, and you just have to sort of puzzle out what the words mean in order to determine what each of these does, because they all talk about enrollments, but they all talk about them in different ways. So the first thing we're going to talk about is anonymous access to the event details page. And if you mouse over the little I in the letter I inside of the circle here, you get information about what this means. And what this means is if you check this box, this class, if you give somebody a link to this class, once you have the page created, once you save, you can take that link, you can send that link out, and then somebody without registering, without creating a user account or doing anything, will be able to view all of the event information or the enrollment, all of the class information, and they'll be able to see when it's scheduled and things like that. Now, if you tie that to either allowing self-enrollment or automatic enrollment with the key, you could make it so that not only did you allow them to browse this, but you gave them the ability to be able to enroll themselves. So it's kind of like the difference between allowing somebody to see what a specific class has and allowing them to enroll or not. If you give somebody the ability to see, oh yeah, I'd like to take this class, but you don't want them to be able to enroll, then you just check the allow anonymous access. If you prefer that you want them to be able to enroll, but they need to have a user account first, then uncheck that and then click on allow self-enrollment. Now, when you allow self-enrollment, you have two primary choices. You can either allow it to be a user with the appropriate self-enrollment role, which is a little more time-consuming to set up, or you can allow anybody to self-enroll. And those might be anonymous users. I shouldn't say anonymous. They all have to be users. They have to be registered in our system. They just have to be, they don't have to have a certain role or capability. And then there's one other checkbox when you do self-enrollment, because by default, self-enrollment automatically ends the minute class begins. If you want to, you can check this box, and this will allow people to self-enroll after the class is started. But you really want to think about that and figure out your sort of class flow if you have people who are adding themselves and enrolling in the class after class has started. All right. And then last but not least is automatic enrollment using a event training key. An event training key is a generated key, and this you can generate a new one if you prefer a different letter number combo, and this gives you the ability to be able to give somebody a key, and they can take that key, register that key, and automatically be enrolled. They may register this key with a brand new user account, or they may register that training key with the with an already existing account. And we have a process called redeem event key or redeem training key that allows them to take this piece of information and go about and redeem it. And once again, we've got webinars on using training and event keys, whether it be for a subscription or a course assignment or for a class like this. All right. And then we have the two choices. Once again, it can only be redeemed until the event ends, or it can be redeemed during the event or after it ends. That might be something that you do for sort of some self-paced event training. Once we get past those options up here, we have the ability to make this visible to other organizations. So if you partner with other organizations and you want a class that's being listed to be visible to them and you can go in and add organizations, provided that that relationship has been set up properly. You can set up payment information under payment types, and you can set that up. Once again, lots of information out there about being able to do that. There is an HTML description, which allows you to make your your description be a little bit more fancy. Instead of just being straight text, it can have pictures and images and things like that. And last but not least, certificates. If your course has a certificate that's associated with it, you can automatically inherit those. Or if you prefer to add an additional certificate or to turn off that inheritance and put a different certificate in place, you can add that certificate here. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And then once I do, I have my class link. Remember how I said you could send somebody the link? You could actually right-click this and do copy link address and then be able to send it to them. But let's go ahead and load that up. I'm going to mute for 1 second while I get ready to sneeze. All right. Sorry about that. Apologize. So here is our class page. Now, again, we could send out this class page right up here at the top just by right-clicking and clicking on copy, or we can have this out there as part of our class catalog or other things to be able to, maybe it's in a course catalog, it's in a class browser, or we have set it up so that it's available to anonymous, and we're going to give out the link. But we have all sorts of capabilities within this class page. So let's do something basic, like let's go ahead and assign a student to the roster. So we go to the roster and we add student. And I'm going to go ahead and put in Brian, and the first name is going to be student. And there's Brian L. student. He's going to be in there, and he's going to be enrolled. Go ahead and save that. This is one important note when you're working with classes. Always, when you have a button that says save changes and you don't know if you've clicked it, make sure you click it, because it's very easy to back out of here or to go back to the details of an event or a class. And when you do, you didn't actually click on save, so you added a bunch of students to a roster and then didn't save it. I find myself doing that. You may not. So here is our class once again. Now our roster has a student in it, and let's take a look at what this class page looks like from the point of view of the instructor. So I'm going to go ahead and impersonate what that instructor looks like here. And then I'm going to go to that instructor's calendar, and we'll go to next Monday because we have it set up right here for the Launch Q3 sample class. And I click on that. And now I can see the roster as the instructor. I can see who's going to be coming. I can do things like email them ahead of time to let them know what's, important things that they might need to know. I've got sign-in sheets or pre-class checklists. I've got monitor labs capability, just like we've talked about in some of the other sessions that are going on today. I also have the ability to be able to work with any of the hands-on labs that have been assigned as an instructor. I can also, I could also go in and take a look at some of the survey results if the class were over at that time. Now, instead of impersonating the instructor, and I go into our roster and impersonate the student, and go ahead and impersonate, and take a look at my current training here. I'm going to take a look at my second example, and you'll notice that the student does not have access to any of the labs yet. That access will be available the second that the class is set to start, based on the schedule that we set up on the start date. So it starts at 8 a.m. Central Time next Monday on October the 5th. And when I go in here at 8:01 or 8 o'clock and 30 seconds, the link will be available to me, and I'll be able to click on launch and be able to launch my labs. And that is how you schedule a class. I know that it sounds really complicated because there's lots of fields and there's lots of things to go through, but actually setting up a class means that you've already set up a successful course. And if the course is right, your class setup is going to be equally easy to set up. So let's just review real quick the 4 points that we talked about. We have talked about the content. We've talked about the users. We've talked about the delivery type, and then we have talked about the connections. So in our particular example here, we have taken the content, which is a course. We've applied it to 2 users. One's an instructor and one's a basic user or a student. We have put it into a instructor-led session, which was a class, and we are delivering it using the connection, which is the class enrollment. We have some resources available for you, and those resources can be found at lods.1/create a class, all one word and no spaces. We would really like it if you were to take your time and fill out the evaluation, which can be found at the bottom of your class page. If you go down to your class, if I find the right class, if you go down to your class and scroll all the way down to the activities, you should see a share your session feedback. Please click on the launch button and send that out. That is really important to make sure that we get a good feedback as to what we did right and anything that we can do to make it better. In addition, if you would like to deliver more information about things that you like or things that you'd like to see or features you'd like in Learn on Demand Systems products, please send out or fill out the form found at lods.1/feedback. And don't forget to post that picture to social media and tag us at LinkedIn, at Twitter, or at Facebook. And with that, I am going to thank you for your time. And if there are any questions, you can go ahead and put them in. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the snappy, peppy music and wish you a good rest of your launch experience.